Did you get to the end of our previous list about great Metroidvania titles and think to yourself, gee, those games sure seem swell, but I like my Metroidvanias with an extra dimension? That's how you sound. Well, fret not, dear viewer, because although we love our 2D side-scrolling pals, sometimes we also like games that are a little less flat, and so we've gone out there to find some fantastic Metroidvania titles that come with not one, not two, but three whole dimensions. For this list, we're taking a look at the very best 3D Metroidvanias that the games industry has to offer. But what do we mean by 3D Metroidvania? Well, obviously 2D side-scrolling is out of the question, but essentially, if a game has the other elements of a Metroidvania title, i.e. a large map with locked areas that require players to obtain key items, and a need to backtrack once they've found said items or are more powerful, then it's welcome on this list. To be clear, some of these games may also fit into other genres, but all of them have Metroidvania qualities as well. I'm Peter from TripleJump, and here are 10 great 3D Metroidvania games. Are you sick of the word Metroidvania yet? Yeah, I know I am. Number 10. Darksiders 3. When Darksiders 3 landed in 2018, it came as a bit of a surprise to fans of the series. After all, the first two games had been straight-up hack-and-slash adventures, and so when the third title swaggered in with its Souls-like and Metroidvania stylings, it came as something of a shock. For the series' third outing, players took on the role of Fury, one of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, who was tasked with hunting down the 7 deadly sins in order to maintain balance in the universe. The game is set in a continuous environment, and exploration plays a key role. In order to gather the materials to upgrade Fury's abilities, players must carefully search their surroundings and will need to solve puzzles, overcome platforming obstacles, and use bombs and Fury's forms. As Fury gains strength and new abilities, players will be able to reach previously inaccessible areas and uncover even more of the game's secrets. Admittedly, Darksiders 3 didn't do as well with critics as its predecessors, but that by no means makes it a bad game. And anyone looking for a decent story and satisfying combat with a sprinkling of Metroidvania for good measure will have a darn good time with it. Number 9. God of War 2018. Now, before everyone gets mad, just hear me out. Is 2018's God of War a Metroidvania per se? No, not exactly. But does it have Metroidvania elements? You bet your boy it does. The game follows hunky dad Kratos as he and his son Atreus journey to the highest peak in the 9 realms in order to spread the ashes of Kratos' late wife. Naturally, things don't exactly go swimmingly, and it isn't long before the duo is entangled in the world of Norse gods. Ever since its release, people have been arguing over whether God of War can be considered a Metroidvania. Those on Team No feel the game is too linear and story-driven to fit into the box. But although it does have more in common with your standard action-adventure titles than it does your average Metroidvania, it's still clear that inspiration was taken from that genre. Sure, the story is linear, but the world is relatively open, and it's filled to the brim with blocked pathways that need to be unlocked with power-ups gained later on in the game. It's not the most Metroidvania-y title ever made, but if you're in the mood for a Norse adventure that borrows a great deal from the genre, then you really can do no better. Number 8. Supraland. If you're in the mood for a 3D Metroidvania, but you're also looking for something cute and colourful, then you could do far worse than to pick up a copy of Supraland, the first-person adventure from indie studio Supra Games. All is not well in the kingdom of the Red People. The Blue People from the neighbouring village have tampered with the water supply, and it's up to the Red People's prince to find out why. Supraland is quite light on story, so its focus is very much on exploration, and it encourages players to investigate every nook and cranny of the world in order to find interesting NPCs with useful knickknacks. The whole game is set within a child's sandbox, which is divided into a number of differently themed areas. In order to progress, players need to solve puzzles which will give them items that then allow them to enter previously inaccessible areas. If you're looking for a deep story and refined combat, then Superland isn't going to be the game for you. If you're after a well-put-together 3D Metroidvania with a lot of heart, loads of fun puzzles, and more pop culture references than you can shake a stick at, then you've come to the right place, my friend. Number 7. Prey, or Prey 2017 if you want to get serious about this. Are you looking for a first-person shooter, but everything you've tried just doesn't have any of that Metroidvania flair that you also so desperately crave in your life? Then you need to try your hand at Prey, the 2017 FPS developed by Arcane Austin. No, that's not my new nickname in the office, and published by Bethesda Softworks. The game is set during an alternate timeline, one where the space race happened a lot more quickly, meaning humans were able to inhabit space stations a great deal earlier. Players jump into the spacesuit of Morgan Yu, a member of the research team on Talos 1. The team had been researching hostile aliens known as the Typhon, however they soon broke free of their confines, and now Morgan is left to fend off the Typhon, all whilst trying to find a way off the station alive. The station itself can be explored in any way players see fit, but as one might expect from a game with Metroidvania elements, many parts of the world can only be overcome once the player has gained certain abilities, which can be done by using a device called a psychoscope on the aliens. It's a tense experience, and you better pray you've got what it takes to survive. That's not, it's spelt with an E, it's prey, as in predator. Number 6, Control. Now I know you're all excited for this entry, but I am going to have to ask you all to control yourselves. See what I did there? You know, because the game's called Control? Yeah. Excellent, good start. The game is centered around the fictional Federal Bureau of Control, a secret government agency whose job it is to conceal and investigate any paranormal phenomena that violate the laws of reality. Control's protagonist, Jesse, is the FBC's new director, who must explore the FBC headquarters in order to overcome the Hiss, a deadly enemy that has corrupted reality. Control is non-linear, so players are able to explore the headquarters in any way they'd like. Being a Metroidvania, though, there are parts of the building that can only be unlocked once they've attained certain powers. As players make their way through the game, they encounter control points, which act both as places to save and as fast travel points, meaning that backtracking is so much easier. Not only are players treated to solid Metroidvania gameplay mechanics here, but they also get to enjoy an interesting story, stylish combat, and a beautiful art style, all of which come together to make Control a must-play for any fan of the genre. Number 5. Castlevania Lament of Innocence. We couldn't have made a Metroidvania list without including a little bit of actual Vania now, could we? Of course, Lament of Innocence isn't the absolute best Castlevania game ever made, that accolade sits firmly with Symphony of the Night, but if you prefer your vampire hunting to have an extra dimension, then it's still a solid choice. Lament of Innocence takes players back all the way to the beginning of the Castlevania saga, and follows Leon Belmont as he travels to the castle of the vampire, Walter Bernard, after his friend Matthias Kronkvist tells him that the bitey lad has captured his lady love. The aim of the game is to guide Leon through the castle and defeat the 5 monsters within, which will then give him access to Walter's throne room for the final showdown. The castle itself is full to the brim with puzzles and concealed items and rooms, and it benefits the player greatly to explore as much of it as possible, as uncovering all of the secrets will make them stronger ahead of the final showdown. Some reviewers did criticize the game for the amount of backtracking required, and admittedly there is quite a lot to do, but hey, it wouldn't be a Metroidvania without that, now would it? Number 4. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. There are some that say Jedi Fallen Order is more of a Souls-like than a Metroidvania, and those people are not entirely wrong. But although the game does borrow heavily from the likes of Dark Souls, it also takes a lot from the Metroidvania genre as well. Jedi Fallen Order takes place several years after the events of Revenge of the Sith, by which time any Jedi that managed to survive Order 66 have gone into hiding, hunted by the Imperial Inquisitors who are tasked with eliminating any remaining Force-sensitive beings. Force. The story focuses on Cal Kestis, a former Jedi Padawan, whose Force sensitivity is uncovered when he saves his friend from falling whilst working on a scrapper on the planet Bracca. He's rescued by a former Jedi Knight and her partner, and embarks on a mission to uncover a Jedi holocron containing a list of Force-sensitive children, which could be used to help rebuild the Jedi Order. In order to progress, players are encouraged to explore, and can only unlock certain areas and solve some puzzles once they've gained more Force powers. In fact, you could even go as far as to say that backtracking is the order of the day. And I'm not going to stop doing that with these game titles, so you're just going to have to deal with it. Number 3. Dark Souls. Dark Souls is one of those games that's created a genre in its own right, much like Metroid and Castlevania. But have you ever stopped to notice how it's kind of Metroidvania-y itself as well? You probably didn't get a chance to stop and think about that because you're having your bum handed to you by a boss at all times. The game starts out quite linear, but once you reach Firelink Shrine, several paths open up. You'll have to find the right one for yourself though, as the game offers no direction, and you might find that some ways lead you to things you're not ready for. For example, New Londo Ruins is populated by ghosts that can't be hit or defended against unless you meet certain conditions. If you do end up there, you better leave and come back when you're fully prepared. Or maybe you'll find yourself in the Tomb of the Giants, an area shrouded in darkness. Obviously you're going to need a light in order to proceed, so back you go until you found yourself a torch or something. Dark Souls puts emphasis on trial and error, and although it has a lot of its own ideas, it also borrows many of its tropes from the Metroidvania genre, leaving players with a highly challenging game that only allows them to progress through careful exploration. Number 2. Batman Arkham Asylum. It's not surprising that many people rank Arkham Asylum amongst their favourite games. It's well written, well acted, and the gameplay is both fun and challenging. It's not just a fantastic action-adventure title though, it's also a brilliant example of a 3D Metroidvania done really well. The game stars none other than everyone's favourite latex-wearing orphan, Bruce Wayne, who finds himself trapped within the titular Arkham Asylum after the Joker manages to pull the old switcheroo whilst being taken into custody. Players must guide Batman through the asylum using his many bat gadgets, is that the technical term? Taking out the Joker's various goons as he goes in order to find the makeup-loving villain. Honestly, if Batman really wants to find out who the Joker is, he really just needs to get a few wet wipes and give him a rub down. Unlike traditional adventure games, however, there are a lot of areas within the asylum that can only be accessed later in the playthrough, once Bats has been able to upgrade his gear. This means that you may come across something early on that has you scratching your head, but once you've found some explosive gel, the bat claw, or the cryptographic sequencer, everything will fall into place. And number 1, Metroid Prime. It would have been remiss, nay, downright unethical of us to put any game in the number 1 spot of a great 3D Metroidvania list besides Metroid Prime. Not only was it a great entry into the series, but it also ended up being one of the best games ever made. Released the best part of a decade after Super Metroid, Metroid Prime is the first game in a 3-part saga that tells the story of Samus's fight against space pirates and the biological experiments they've created. Players must scour the world of Talon 4 to find a number of artifacts that will open paths to the Phazon Meteor impact crater. Over the course of the game, players are able to assign upgrades to Samus, some of which enable her to reach previously inaccessible areas. The Morph Ball allows Samus to compress herself so she can roll into small places. The Grapple Beam allows her to latch onto special hooks to swing across gaps, and special boots allow her to double jump. Can we just check? Are we legally allowed to say that? I'm not sure. The game successfully brought the series into both the 21st century and the third dimension, proving without a doubt that you can still be Metroid even if you're not 2D.